So, you know how when you're scrolling through Instagram Reels, because you don't really want to install TikTok, because you're not a Gen Z, but you still want to enjoy short form videos that rots your brain. And also you want to share those dank memes with your friends. If you do that often, like I do, you might have noticed this weird trend with the descriptions of these videos. You know, those long text that looks obviously ChatGPT generated, like something about Mercedes or some kind of recipe. And apparently they do that so they can put their memes in the education category, and that somehow helps with the reach, I guess. It's just a theory I've heard though. A game theory, if you will. Anyway, one of the more popular one of those is this one, the classic brownie recipe. And I've been always wondering, like, is this recipe actually legit? Does it actually produce a real brownie? Well, today I intend to find that out. Well, here's the full ingredients list for this recipe. And just by looking at this, I thought this is a pretty big portion. I think this is meant to be for like a big pan, full-size pan for the oven. And I don't really want to commit to a huge amount of ingredients to something that could potentially fail. So initially I thought making this in half the amount of every ingredients. But turns out I don't really have that much cocoa powder, so I had to make it the quarter size. So the first thing is I need the right sized pan for this, and this is the smallest oven safe pan that I could find, so this is what I'm using. And the first step is to preheat the oven, but I don't really like to do that, so I'm just gonna do the next step, which is buttering up the pan. I think the recipe doesn't specify butter, but I use it anyway. So I'm just rubbing it on the surface just to make it greasy. And the next step is to measure out some butter and melt that in the pan. So I'm just taking slices off of the butter and measuring it directly into the pan. And here I am putting that on low heat until it all melts into liquid. And while that's cooling, we have to prepare the rest of the ingredients. So the first thing to do is to measure out some sugar. Oh, and don't mind that little green thing. That's actually a little bit of candy that we put in the sugar container. Because my parents are kind of old and they mix up the salt and sugar sometimes. So we put that in there just as a marker. So after that's been measured, the butter must have been cooled sufficiently. So I'm mixing that in with the sugar. And I just take a whisk and mix all that evenly. And so far this looks pretty good. This looks kinda tasty already. It's like a buttercream. And they want us to drop an egg in here and mix it well, which I did. And again, this looks really good. This looks tasty already, as it is. And the next step is to measure out all the dry stuff, so the powder. And the first thing is the all-purpose flour, but we didn't have that, so I just used the bread flour, which isn't ideal. I should have used the cake flour, but I think it's fine. It doesn't really matter too much. Next thing is cocoa powder, which I had just enough. Also, the instruction tells us to sift these powders, but I decided not to because it's just too much work and I'm lazy. And I think it'll be fine. You don't have to really sift stuff. And here it is all measured out. And now you have to mix this on its own. And also, the recipe didn't really tell when to put the salt in. So I just decided to put the salt in with the rest of the powders. It's a very tiny amount though. It's not like... I don't think it really matters. Now coming back to the wet ingredients, I forgot to add the vanilla extract, which we do not have, but we have this thing, which is actual vanilla beans. Just going to grind some of that up and add it to the wet mixture. And then you have to slowly add the powder into the wet mixture while mixing. And here I decided to use the spatula instead of the whisk because I thought the batter is gonna be caught in the whisk, which is going to be annoying to clean, so I think the spatula is the way to go here. And this is fully mixed and it looks really good. It looks like a nice brownie butter. And it smells great too. It smells very chocolatey and it has nice texture to it. So in the recipe, this is written as optional, the chocolate chips. I decided to add it because we had these large chunks, but they were quite big, so I decided to chop them up into smaller bits. And here it is, all finely chopped. So I dump all that into the batter and just gently fold them in. And here it is, the finished batter, which looks really good. Once again, I have pretty big faith in this. It looks nice. Don't mind the mess on the table. Just made a huge mess. That happens when you're baking. And now we're going to pour that into the greased pan. And honestly, it has really good texture. It's really easy to handle. There's a bit of spillage. It's quite difficult working with this while looking through the camera too, so don't mind the little mess that I made. And now you just have to spread that evenly across the pan and just smooth out the top. And it's ready to go into the oven. And I'm not really using an oven here. This is like a oven toaster. It's a toaster that also works as a little oven. And I set that to 170 degrees. I think I was supposed to set it to 175, but I made a little mistake. I think it'll be fine, it's just 5 degrees. And once the preheating is done, I'm putting the mixture into the oven. And I'm setting the time to 25 minutes, which is the specified time in the recipe. And here it is, baking. Also, while that was going, I decided to clean all the dirty dishes that I created. Just like the best time to do it. And I did this in like 4 AM and the outside started to get brighter, so I decided to head out real quick and check on my pumpkin. Anyway, back in the house, and this is after 25 minutes. And I'm doing the toothpick test as described in the recipe. So I'm just stabbing it with the toothpick and see what comes out. And it looked still kinda wet inside, so I decided to leave it in for a bit more. And here's the result from the second test, and it came out dry, so I decided it's done. And I think it's been like 30 minutes since the beginning of the baking. So the time specified in recipe seemed to be correct. And that's it of the baking, and it looks really good, and it smelled awesome too. It smelled so chocolatey in the house. The little close-up for you. And I let that cool for about 1 hour, and I took some out, and here it is. It honestly looks pretty good. It looks like a brownie. So it smells awesome, and it looks good, but does it actually taste good? And the answer is yes, it is. It is legit brownie, and it's not too sweet, not too bitter. It's quite soft, has crumbly skin. It is actually really good. So do I recommend this? Definitely. I'm impressed, honestly. And of course, this is AI generated recipe. There is no copyright to the text, so I'm just gonna paste that whole thing in the description if you want to try it yourself. And there are other AI recipes on Instagram, so maybe I should try those in the future. But for now, this is it. So, bon appetit, and thanks for watching.